Om Shanti, good evening. Welcome to Interview with the Raj Yogi. And our theme tonight is learning to let go. As always, we'll start with a reflection. Probably one of the easiest ways to experience letting go is just with the body physically, releasing tension. And I take the help of the breath, taking a breath in through the lungs. And as I slowly release the air from the lungs, it cues the muscles of the body to let go. Tension that might have been held unknowingly is released. And again, another breath in. And once more, releasing the air. Feeling the body relax into the chair, into the seat. And just normal breath. I continue to observe the breath of the body, the rhythm of inhale and exhale, as if that's my entire world. Just watching the breath, allowing the breath to carry my mind inwards into a calm space. How focusing on something subtle like the breath takes all my attention. And creates a natural simplicity in my mind. I don't even think of it as letting go of all other thoughts. I just think of it as completely focusing on a single thought, the breath. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, and welcome to Interview with Raj Yogi. And as Judy mentioned, tonight's topic is learning to let go. So actually, it came up from yesterday or last week's sharing. Actually, when we were talking about the topic of power of contentment, but we were talking about letting go and letting go to experience that I am a soul. And we were sharing about how do you ask someone to let go? And perhaps maybe that's we had mentioned about last week as well, that it's not that I am letting go just like that. And the reflection tonight was very useful. There's something else that I'm actually focusing my attention on. And so that's the intent of tonight's session. The thought was that we would actually perhaps look at the different capacities that we as souls have. We call them powers, but how they're relevant is one thing, but it's the how that is really important. Letting go, I remember you sharing it many times. Letting go is, it takes a lot of power to let go. Can you share a little bit more on that?
First, you talked about capacities or powers. Um, the feeling is that letting go is actually a natural capacity of each of us as souls. So we all have this capacity to let go. And it's in the study of Raj Yoga, the term we use is liberation. It is the deepest desire in every soul because it's the deepest capacity of every soul. So we have it um, in our makeup to be able to do this. What happens is that we lose the power to do it. So, this idea of accumulating power to do what actually comes quite naturally to us is what we look at with Raj Yoga. And it's sometimes, the image that comes to my mind is of a rocket launching into space. The rocket is trying to let go. Actually, it's, we say, become free or liberated from the pull of gravity. And I think we all know the tremendous power that's required for that rocket to become free of gravitational pull, deep attachment to the earth through gravity, incredible power. So, also, we require this accumulation of power to do something that we're actually made to do, which is to be free or let go.
Sometimes you hear souls talk about letting go, just in day to day life, things that have happened, and they're able
Mm-hmm.
to let it go. But it feels like they may have even shared it's like a hit or miss. Don't really know why. How is it I can let go in this situation, or suddenly I am able to let go of something in the past that I've been harboring in my mind? Um, as if the power is there, but we're not able to wield it. Or
Sometimes it's a case of it's easy to let go because it's not really that important to me. So that could be one thing that's happening. Another is that a stronger replacement has come along that allows that letting go to happen. So I'm just replacing it with another attachment.
I think you mentioned that last week that we let go in temporary ways. And as I had shared that I do work with individuals with chronic pain, so one of the things that they use as management is distraction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's quite common. The example we give in the course is if a child, you leave a pair of scissors out and the toddler comes along and just sees a shiny object, doesn't know that it could be dangerous. It's just shiny toy. So they pick up the scissors and they're playing with it, and you come in, you see them, and you're horrified. But they've got an ironclad grip on this shiny toy because it's so lovely. And so now, how am I going to get the toy from the child without damage? So we find a shinier, more interesting toy, maybe a set of keys, and dangle those, and we're replacing.
It brings up an interesting question because it kind of goes around and around about the conversation about consider yourself to be a soul. Is
Mm-hmm.
that some feel, I don't know if I'm feeling anything.
Yeah, it's um, it's a really odd situation. So usually, what we ask is, do you have the faith you are a soul? Because if the answer is yes, and that's something that one can sort of think through, but what it means is that I'm a soul and I'm not feeling I'm a soul, which means I must have tremendous attachment to feeling I'm the body. And there's a couple of forms of power we work with in Raj Yoga or try to accumulate to help us extricate from one attachment and basically attach to being a soul. And the two forms of power is the power of truth or knowledge and the power of purity or yoga. Those are the two. And really, the power of truth or knowledge is what we can work with first. So, this sense of recognizing, I know that's right. I know that we're souls. I know I don't feel it. I can tell as I go through the day, I'm acting like I'm the body, but I know. So we say recognition or recognition, not just cognition of some knowledge, but actually recognizing it. So this power of knowledge, which can also be called power of open-eyed faith or recognition, that's kind of a place that we can start to soften the grip. And we're offering a different attachment, if you will, different. So I'm not going into nothingness. And I think that's the big story behind letting go is so deeply in our minds, we believe it's into emptiness. And that is not possible. Souls even think meditation is to stop thinking. I want to let go of the thoughts I'm having, so I'll just go into emptiness. And that is actually not what we are looking at with Raj Yoga.
So, this is a two-part question because when you're mentioning about knowledge and power allows me to let go, and you were talking about purity. How about in just like day-to-day examples, when you're all wound up and someone's pretty light and kind of helps to sort of loosen that tension?
Mm-hmm.
There's not necessarily, I wouldn't particularly say that there's any knowledge or truth there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're true in terms of how genuine they are, but in terms of what I know many souls grapple with in terms of knowledge, to move knowledge to something that actually is something useful.
Yeah, in your example, you were really focusing in on the second form of power, the power of purity, which is the power of a pure vibration, a pure atmosphere. So souls will share when they could come to the center physically, that they would come into that space and start to relax, start to let go, if you will, create space for something new or different to come in. And what was happening there was the power of purity. That it's a really visible power. It's actually how you create something new, and it's like a vibration is the best way we can describe it. And yeah, it can affect each other. I'd say it is the main power needed at this time. But if someone is in that state, that very pure, free light state, they're vibrating. They're creating a vibration, or we say atmosphere, and that can affect others. That power of purity, and for that moment, they suddenly find the thoughts in their mind will change.
So, how can that purity be useful when I'm studying? Can it be something that is an important ingredient prior to being able to absorb my, like, any sense of understanding in the study?
We've noticed that instinctively, because there's this other funny little thing happen we've talked about before called disinterest, which is massively helpful in letting go of one thing to move to something else. Is that I'm just not interested. I'm addicted. But I'm actually not getting anything from the thing that I'm attaching to. That's very helpful. That's really going to cooperate. So, this idea of disinterest, and souls that have disinterest, they'll suddenly get a pull to do weird things like spring clean the house or throw out, donate stuff they're not. So, they're suddenly going into a decluttering mode. And I know that decluttering's become quite popular now, but this disinterest, it's on a gross level, but it's actually going to help us to purify on a very physical or superficial level, but it's helping us. So they just sort of start to want to let go of things, and it's just this inner drive. They're not quite sure why. I remember hearing a story. It was very, very interesting story about a young man who he very sort of quite poor household. He and his father would clean swimming pools for rich, very wealthy people, and they were very, very poor. But they go and clean swimming pools, so they're in this weird situation where they're very, very poor, but they're constantly seeing extremely wealthy homes. And so the young man, in his mind, this is what we attach to, links happiness to wealth, wealthy on the physical level, and programs his mind that that's what I want. So he starts to make choices that will get him there, and really works hard. And I think he goes into law, business of actually I think it was business, but very good school, and works very hard. And he, very young age, he's New York, and everything that he had programmed, that he had attached to very deeply as a vision, he achieves. But then he starts to notice he's surrounded by others who also are just as ambitious, that the others around him are starting to have health issues. And one, very, very young, but has heart attack. And that's very sobering for him. He's starting to see the price of that kind of choice, the stress, and he has no interest in that price. And it's working on him inside. He's starting to let go. It's working on him, that fear of what he's seeing. It's too high a price. And I'm not sure if an incident had happened or what the case was, but he just suddenly decided. I think a friend, yes, a friend had suggested he try an experiment, because he's sharing that he doesn't think he can continue this way, but he's not quite sure how to let go. And so his friend suggests that he take everything in his house and pack it up in boxes, including his car, everything. Pack everything up. I guess he wrapped his car maybe in cellophane, I'm not sure. But pack everything up, everything, and only unpack something if he has to use it. And so he does it. And he found that it was only like a very, very small fraction of things that he needed to use. He also found by this process, he was getting happier, lighter. He eventually actually left his job. He had many realizations. The end of the story, left his job, started a whole new career path that had nothing to do with making a lot of money, but did have to do with helping people to declutter or let go. So that disinterest based on seeing the price or the consequence is very powerful in creating the soil to start to be open. In this case, it was the idea from his friend, but starting to be open to different practices or studies that will support where our disinterest is trying to take us.
It sounds like timing was a huge piece that he
Mhm.
had that disinterest. If he didn't have that disinterest to begin with, and his friend could give him that idea, and probably think that's the craziest idea I've ever heard.
Exactly. Yeah. It was so which comes first? Does our disinterest invoke information, or does the information just have to keep coming until it's the
Probably.
right time?
It's
Yeah.
interesting
Hmm.
because I do know somebody who, at a very young age, said, "I'm going to be a millionaire at the age of 30."
Hmm.
He's well beyond 30, but I would certainly say the choices in his life are such that it's quite damaging. But perhaps maybe he doesn't see. That's the ironic thing, that he was having these. Probably who knows? That's a great question. He had this disinterest, and he's seeing friends around him in that predicament. I do think about the law of karma, I suppose, or maybe your capacity to see something, but because deep inside there's
Hmm.
already something calling out.
Yeah, I personally feel just what we have been taught about how the world works, and that actually the world is us. It's not something out there, it's us. We are the world. So when there is some, no matter how small, but some sincere shift inside of us, it moves, it makes things happen. And I don't want that to sound kind of new agey or occult, but the state of the soul determines what's going on around the soul. Which, yes, we connect to a lot of karma. So if I, with sincerity, someone can say, I want to change, but it's not really coming from a deep, heartfelt place, it's not going to really happen, or it will only be temporary. But if it comes from a really deep longing, a disinterest, a readiness, then I think it attracts, its support.
Many individuals find it's really hard then to let go, even just the beginning of meditation, if we want to use that word. It's a pretty loaded word, but they fall asleep. And there's probably things are happening, maybe trying to stop my thoughts, maybe checking out without even realizing I'm checking out. But I did find that reflection beginning quite interesting about you were using an example, just focusing on my breath, right? And um, so you're actually redirecting your attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in terms of strengthening my capacity to let go, is it useful, I suppose, maybe just to start with something as simple as, reflecting on, values that matter to you or your sense of purpose as sort of a beginner's um, approach to trying to be able to go into meditation, if we want to use that word, without falling asleep all the time. Um,
Mm.
so, is that approach helpful, and does that actually help strengthen that capacity to let go before I can even start with the knowledge?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's probably two parts, push and a pull. Having said that, I think we need to add that we don't ideally want violence involved. So push and pull can sound like violent words, but I think there has to be massive patience in all of this, that we've been hanging on for a long time. So we have to be quite patient with the self. And that attitude of patience can already help a lot in kind of not making us anxious or harsh on the self. But there is the pull, which is the why that you talked about. If I was to use the example of the body and the idea of the breath, many of us carry tension in the body without knowing it. It's quite remarkable, actually, what we do. So the body is screaming out in pain, but we have become numb to that. Very similar to, so we just keep holding the tension until there is some sort of crisis, which you've talked about. So the feeling, I don't want to do this. So pulling it forward, I want well being in this example in the body. I want well being. I want physical well being. So that's the pull. But also, this idea of the push is the price. If I don't do this, something is going to be just ridiculous on the body. So these two forces, they apply spiritually as well. Spiritually, I want that peace, that happiness, just that lightness, you know, that freedom from the heaviness, the tension, the stress. And then, the understanding of, if I don't do this, what will the consequences be? So that push and pull, being aware of that, it's not to frighten us, but it can help to support or focus us in. When our thoughts are straying, just to say, is this really how I want to spend this moment? Didn't I think about this 100 times already today? Do I need to do it again? So it's being light and patient, but very aware of, what am I? What is the purpose of my sitting here? So for those who think meditation is checking out, they will find it very difficult to let go and just not zone out, as you said. Those who realize it's quite a purposeful act, I'm sitting here with a purpose. That's already going to help us to focus in why am I sitting here? And, yes, where I'm trying to get to. And if I don't move towards that, what will happen? This use of time.
So then the quality of my thoughts, can it then therefore take me more into, like, I don't want to use the word letting go to make it redundant, but it just brings a bit more focus. There's a bit more of a settling of my thoughts. Like one feels differently when they are actually having meaningful questions, to at least bring them to a space where they can start to reflect on the knowledge.
Yeah, again, as we started, what we're trying to do is focus on this. So I let go of that. So with the infant, they've got the scissors, I've got the keys, I'm jiggling. I've got to get their attention. They've got to see what I'm jiggling these keys, and they have to feel that that is interesting, more interesting than what they're holding on to. And it's the same in meditation, just to get to the point where I'm paying attention to this other body of information that we call spiritual knowledge. And that I feel there's something useful. It takes time. So that's why we really try to deliberately expose ourselves to the knowledge, just to get us used to paying attention to it. So we develop a schedule where at least once a day we're exposed to the knowledge in quite a scheduled way, a deliberate way. So it gets us used to thinking about it, exposing ourselves. So just even to get our attention to go there to the thing that will help us to let go of the other types of thoughts requires a little bit of support, quite deliberate.
So for our practical, for those who are watching, what
Mm-hmm.
could be helpful then? You're sharing about exposing myself to the knowledge in a sort of structured
Yeah,
way.
yeah. One thing that we do is very interesting because there are these meditation sessions that are offered through a social media platform. So what happens is that it happens in real time live, and souls can join at that time, but it's also recorded, so souls could go and listen to it anytime. And I remember one soul, and it really touched me. I found it quite intriguing. Um, they said, "Oh, I missed it this morning," and I'm looking at them like, "Well, you didn't miss it. It's recorded. You can." They said, "No, no, I like to listen to it live. I like to be there at that time when it's happening. I like that schedule." And I think that that's very helpful. We always suggest at the beginning of the day, but to have a scheduled time every day, um, kind of get oneself ready. Have whether it's uh, a, a book that they're reading or something that they're accessing online, but that spiritual knowledge is ready. And once a day, ideally in the morning at the beginning of the day, expose yourself to that spiritual knowledge in a very meaningful way. So not as a ritual but actually I want to understand something to the point that I feel I could implement it or practice it. So then we give ourselves that home. So it's starting to really develop an attachment, or the healthier word that we like to use is a relationship with that new thing that's going to help me to let go of the old.
Is it kind of like chewing on it, reflecting on it?
Hmm.
Hmm.
It is. We always have to be careful that it doesn't become an intellectual exercise because that's just old. But yeah, I want to really experience it, and that can take some time because, as we've mentioned in other sessions, there will be opposition from the old trying to block or numb the experience.
I don't want us to sort of digress, but just since we are on the topic of being able to practically let go, I
Mhm.
certainly see two camps, I suppose: the intellectual that can happen when you're listening to knowledge. But the other is it sounds really nice, so don't really do anything with it.
Mm,
No.
yeah, I again will underline so much patience and compassion as one shifts over, because a lot of interference is going to come up. And honesty is very helpful. Learning to keep an eye on the self, what is really going on here, is helpful if one can develop that honesty towards the self. But yeah, we want to know what it's like when I am genuinely experiencing it, versus imagining it. Um, and really, only I can internally figure that out. There are some signs and signals that will begin to help us to know if we're having a genuine experience. It always comes down to that stability, but I need to not sort of skip along. It's a bit of a different study. It's okay if you stay with the same subject for years. It's not being slow, it's being thorough and honest. So, have I really, the first lesson, I'm a soul, not the body. So that's the first replacement we look at. It's very deep, um, not something to skip through and just repeat, but to deeply experience. It's quite fascinating. Even as we sit here now, you know, I know the feelings. It's so easy to think I'm the body, and what kind of care, not just to say I'm a soul, but actually feel I'm not this body. I am present, I am observing, I'm aware, I'm not this body. So it's not that I did detach from the body, but I replaced it with an experience of being a soul. Does that happen? Is the question. So it's not an intellectual thing, it's an honesty thing.
Would you say that's the greatest letting go?
Absolutely. Everything else depends on it, actually. This word mine starts with the body. It's relative to the body that all the other minds come. So, this idea of shifting from my body. Mhm.
It feels like the more that being a soul, feeling that a soul becomes more real, that it comes to life, that it is moving into reality, and when you do, you let go of that which isn't real. But
Mhm.
to begin with, it feels quite conceptual, quite theoretical, intellectual.
Mhm. Yeah, or it's deceptively simple, so that again we might sort of skip over it. There are so many forms of resistance. Intellectual is one, but yeah, different forms of resistance that come up. It's simple, it's easy, but it's not. It's both. It's a very simple thing to think I'm a soul, but it's extremely challenging when you're deeply attached to thinking you're a body.
So the more you're fixed on something, just the more the challenges there are.
Mm-hmm.
So, if there are those who are online, you have any questions about this topic about learning to let go, please let us know. We are
Mm-hmm.
able to see the chat box, but I know we have just a few more minutes. But in terms of letting go, we call it a power. How do I know what are some signs that I am letting go? Because I think we can get kind of fixated, as you're saying. You're sitting there, in meditation, and you might be saying the same thing again and again. You're not going anywhere, and we
Mm-hmm.
don't even, I guess, watch ourselves and say, okay, you know what, let's just stop. This isn't really helpful. So I think signs would be very helpful for souls.
What is fascinating about Raj Yoga? Most of our approaches to letting go before we come into Raj Yoga, because it's connected to loss, is to move away from. So I want to let go of the pain around a certain place, so I move away from that place. I want to let go of what's happening at work, so I change jobs. So it's always about moving away. The idea of letting go whilst in it seems crazy to us, and yet this is a huge sign of truly letting go. It's easy to say I let go if you've moved away from it, but it could still be happening in your head. So the idea is, the sign I've really let go is that I'm there in that situation and the feelings are different than they were before. In fact, the highest form or sign of letting go is I have very loving or kind feelings, good feelings in that situation. Um, so we say loving and detached, or loving and able to be free. But this is the weird part of Raj Yoga, is to not be attached whilst amidst the thing that I was previously attached to. It's quite fascinating. So I'm going to experience myself to be a soul while I'm still in the body. It's no problem to experience myself as a soul while I'm leaving the body. I think it's going to come quite naturally. I'll suddenly be aware, oh, I'm not the body, I'm leaving it. But to do it whilst I'm in the body, that's fascinating, right? So I'm not going to reject the body. Whilst I'm in the body using it, I'm going to feel I am not this body, I'm separate, I'm expressing through it, but I'm not this body. And then it will create, of course, the peace, the easiness, the nonviolence, all of these signs that I've got it happening, that letting go is there. Do you need this? Did it die?
I don't know. You were sharing about there would be these certain signs, and I would be able to have these feelings as well for others. Is that a sign of real peace? Like, could I? I guess I don't know how you can say it, but can you be peaceful and also judgmental at the same time? Because to be able to let go in the middle of it, in the middle of the attachment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we often say, oh, yeah, no, I'm peaceful. It's just everything around me is peaceless. So I'm fine. So we often say you're going to need 3 certificates in Raj Yoga. You can say you're peaceful, but the people around you have to also feel you're peaceful. And we say, God also has to give you a certificate. But, in general, it's like, again, so easy to be peaceful when everything's going the way I want, or when I'm in a peaceful place. Sure, I can give myself a certificate of being peaceful. But when things seem a little chaotic, pandemic is a great example, not maybe the way I envisioned. um, this pandemic is a wonderful exercise in letting go. Souls are really struggling because all of their supports, all that made up their quality of life, everything is kind of falling away. And so, what would be the sign that my quality of life does not change? When I say that, I don't mean the stuff. I'm talking about internally. I still feel light, peaceful, appreciative. That's still all there. That's a sign that I've mastered letting go. So it's easy when everything is the way I want. Um, but of course, freedom from desire is a huge letting go as well. That contentment, no matter what's happening around me, is a sign that I'm successful.
So, real peace would be that you would have these even good wishes and pure feelings for others, if it's the real thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Very useful to know. And so I believe we're running out of time. And once again, we will touch on the different capacities that we as souls have. And it's really the focus on the how. I'll just list a bunch of things, but the
Mhm.
how, which is so, so important. Mhm. So I'm going to pass it over to Judy for a little reflection.
As I sit here, I focus on the most basic, most valuable act of letting go, which I think of more as a shift, not so much letting go as shifting my consciousness, my sense of self, my reference point. I've become deeply attached to thinking I am this body. And yet I am pulled, fascinated by the idea that I am actually a soul. There is an openness to experience myself as a soul. I will be patient, but every time I sit, this is where I will begin. Focusing my awareness, my attention to that place from which I observe, behind the eyes, behind the forehead. My sense of presence there. And from there, I observe the body, very present, observing the body, aware that I am observing the body and that the body cannot observe me. I am using this body to express through. There is me, the one observing, and there is the body, the object of my observation. We are separate, and it's okay. I still exist. There's no loss in experiencing myself to be separate from the body. I'm still here. There's actually attainment because I know this body is perishable. There will come a point when it is no longer of use, able to function. I will definitely have to let it go then. Definitely have to shift. It will become very clear that I am not this body. But what is it like to live that way? That free, using the body, caring for the body, expressing through the body all the qualities that are within me, to experiment with that way of life, that shift, and see, does it affect my quality of life? Does it bring me closer to the peace I seek? Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you for those who've joined us online. And thank you, Judy, for
Mm.
very thought provoking things. I hope that we can all reflect on I think it's one of the biggest ones about letting go. It's huge.
Mm.
I think that the habits are really strong
Yeah.
in terms of forcing things, numbing things, checking out, and I can imagine how much interference there is.
Hmm.
So Judy, I don't have to move, but you can tell us what.
I think you should
No,
because
I need to still do things
never get
technically.
it right.
Actually, I might have to move over there. Actually,
Um,
so
I know that inner fitness is on preparation.
yes, it's true.
So, this Saturday on the Zoom platform, Inner Fitness is on the topic of preparation, which is quite useful actually to the act of meditation preparation. So, that's on Saturday. And again, we have our drop-in meditations Tuesday and Thursday nights, 6:45 to 7:30, and Sundays, 6:30 to 7:30. And all of these are archived on our site as well, because we know souls are in different time zones and such. Um, I think that's it. Interview with a Raj Yogi is, oh, there's much more actually, is Thursdays on the basics of Raj Yoga, 7:35 to 8:15, and this Saturday, 12 to 1:30, we have a special workshop based on the teachings of Raj Yoga called Applied Spirituality. And that's going to be with Nora again, looking at the how, the practical. That will be on the Zoom platform, and it's all on our website. So if none of this is sticking in there, you're a master of letting go. It's fantastic. So feel free to check our website. Om Shanti.